Hello, everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alina Dano, and I am here with you as your Education USA advisor. June starts with very interesting sessions with a lot of great topics, and we know that you really enjoy talking about funding your undergraduate studies, for example, the topic that we have today. So I just want to specify that Education USA Regional is assisting you with your application for your studies in the US. Doesn't matter, that should be undergraduate or postgraduate, so you can get our help and our assistance during this difficult process. So in case if you need some help, let us know. We are here to consult you. Everything is for free. So today we have invited another speaker that is going to talk about how to fund your undergraduate studies. And we have here Shane McGuire. Thank you so much, Shane, for joining us today. I will just give you the floor so you can introduce yourself, and we can just go on with the presentation. For the people who have joined us today, please submit your questions in the chat. We also have some questions that you have addressed in advance, and we'll make sure to answer all of them. So thank you once again, and yes, enjoy our live today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. My name is Shane McGuire from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee in the United States, sort of in the southeast part of the United States. I have been at Vanderbilt for about 12 years now. I oversee kind of all of our international recruitment and selection across the world. So excited today to, I'll start by kind of introducing you to life at Vanderbilt, talk a little bit about sort of the university, and I'll end with talking a little bit about sort of the funding opportunities that we have. And then I'll also talk a little bit broadly about sort of the funding opportunities that are out there, as I know that can be a big deciding factor as you're looking at institutions. It can be a little bit of a complicated process, so hopefully I can shed some light on kind of what that can look like there. So I'll just kind of dive right in. I have a handful of slides to show you here. Starting with sort of this first one, just kind of, again, showing you a little bit of sort of the location where we are located in Nashville. But I always start with sort of these themes as you kind of look at your experience at Vanderbilt. These are really sort of the three big themes that frame the experience. This is a place that is very much built around collaboration. It is a very sort of competitive institution to get into. But when we're sort of on campus, sort of the experience that you have is that you'll be working with students, working with faculty, very much sort of celebrating each other's successes. That really is sort of the vibe and culture on campus. We are very intentional about the community that we create. We want students coming from all across the United States and all across the world gathering in one place. We want our campus to really reflect the larger world that we are a part of. And we want you to be sitting in the classroom across the table from someone who may think differently than you and who may challenge those perspectives. We really want to foster sort of that civil discourse in and outside the classroom. And I think this last one is a big reason why a lot of students end up at Vanderbilt. We put a huge emphasis on the balance piece. Yes, this is a place that will challenge you academically, that will push you outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And I think you might want that in that academic experience, but we also want you to find that sense of community, that sense of belonging while you're there. And I think our students do a really nice job of finding both of those during that experience. As you're looking at institutions in the United States, we sort of fall nicely into that medium-sized category. So a little over 7,000 undergraduate students, about 13,500. So you're looking at graduate and professional students, and you have 11 colleges and schools kind of all together in one place on our campus. We're a little over 11% international students, and that is just sort of international passport holders. That number is a little bit higher if you're looking at either U.S. citizens or dual citizens that may be coming from outside the United States. So a nice representation across the globe on our campus. I continue to see that number grow as more and more students across the world are looking at Vanderbilt and looking to come to our campus. Just again, to kind of give you a sense of sort of where we are within the United States. We are in the southeast part of the country. I know a lot of times when you might look at the U.S., you are probably very familiar with a lot of the coastal cities. Even a lot of times when you are flying over to the United States, you may come through a Boston or a New York or a DC, or a pretty quick flight to Nashville from there. Things are a little bit easier now getting to us from Europe, from Central Asia. We do have a direct flight from London now that does make that a little bit easier getting to our campus. And we're located about 15 or 20 minutes from the airport. We are right in the heart of Nashville, Tennessee. And this is the part of the country that's known for being very welcoming, very friendly. You get a really nice mix of all four seasons. So it's a really fun part of the country to sort of be in during your undergraduate experience. Again, a little bit more about sort of the location that we're in. We are considered an urban campus or a city campus because of that location. We are 3 kilometers from the center of downtown, so literally in the heart of everything. However, when you walk around our campus, you could very easily forget that you're in a city. So it has that very park-like traditional college campus feel to it that you hear about in the United States. But as soon as you step off the campus, you have incredible opportunities, incredible experiences to take advantage of in the city of Nashville. Nashville is an incredibly fun city. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. A little over 2 million people in sort of the greater Nashville area, so kind of a medium-sized city by U.S. standards. You can see there a handful of the companies that have major headquarters, corporations, regional offices in Nashville. It continues to grow in industries around finance, entrepreneurship, engineering, healthcare, education, law, which provides our students a lot of incredible professional development opportunities. And that's something that about 3/4 of our students will do, getting out and getting that professional experience in the workplace. That being said, you are not limited to what is happening in Nashville. We send students all over the place to do internships. We're actually in the process right now of opening a new campus in the heart of New York City that will allow students to go there for a semester, do an internship, but actually have an on-campus experience where they can live there, take some classes, but also take advantage of the internship opportunities in New York City as well. If you have ever heard of Nashville, if you're familiar with Nashville at all, probably the thing that most people know is sort of the music piece. We are technically the country music capital of the world, or Music City, USA. I promise it's not required to love country music to come to Nashville. I've been in Nashville for a long time, not a huge country music fan, but any band or artist that I have ever wanted to see has almost certainly come through Nashville when they're touring across the United States. Our campus serves as a venue for live music many times. So we really embrace sort of the Music City, USA. It's also a fantastic city for food. As a student, you will have this meal plan that will work at all the on-campus eateries. We have some of the best food on any college campus in the US, but it also works at a lot of local eateries and coffee shops and cafes off campus as well, allowing you to get out and take advantage of the incredible city that you're in. So it really is a fun place to live and a fun place to go to school. Bringing you back to campus a little bit in terms of sort of the academic experience that you will find. So we actually have multiple schools that live within Vanderbilt. So when you apply, you're actually applying to one of these schools because you need to have a home somewhere within the university. But you can take classes in any of these schools. You can double major across schools, do major minor combinations. So really that whole curriculum is open to you as a student. At the center of everything that we do, we have that sort of traditional liberal arts college that you might hear about in the United States. It houses about 50 of our different majors over there. It's a wonderful place to look if you are undecided, if you have a lot of different interests. You can actually show up on our campus, not necessarily know what you want to study, take your first couple years to explore that curriculum before you have to decide on a major there. The other schools are a little more specialized in what they do. Fantastic School of Engineering, a very cool school of education that's sort of preparing students for teaching in the classroom, but also has some really interesting psychology programs, including a very popular major around organizational leadership and psychology there. We're in Music City, USA, so of course we have a School of Music. It's a very classically based school of music that also has majors in jazz as well. And then we are in the process of opening a new school as well. It's going to be very focused on AI, on computing. In fact, our computer science major, which we have had for a very long time and has been in our School of Engineering, will be the main focus over there. We'll be moving over there this year, and we'll be enrolling students in that first year starting in fall 2027. There'll likely be minors around data science, AI, machine learning. So a lot of interesting things that are happening within sort of that new school as well. But again, picking one as a home base, but can take classes in any of those schools while you're there. We also want you to have incredible experiences that extend beyond the classroom. We put a big emphasis on that learning that takes place beyond just sitting in a classroom with students, with sort of lecture. We want you to have those experiences outside the classroom. And in fact, every single student at Vanderbilt will do something that we call immersion Vanderbilt. We want you to have at least one of these experiences that could be an internship, that could be research, could be a study away or study abroad experience that you do, could be some sort of creative project or endeavor, some sort of service learning experience. But the nice thing is you get to be the driver of this experience. You will have a lot of great support and advisors to help you think about these experiences as well. If you are someone who does love research, incredible research opportunities, a lot of our undergraduates will dive into that. It's close to about 60% that dive into research outside the classroom. Many students end up on publications. So some really incredible opportunities that you have. You also have incredible access to faculty. Even though we're a little bit bigger institution, you have those relationships with faculty. They're all holding office hours where you can go and meet with them if you have questions or just to sort of talk about different things. Many of them also live in the residence halls alongside students. That is a big part of our experience. We have sort of that living learning model. That's a huge part of the first year experience, where kind of all of our first years are living together on this one area of campus with faculty living in each of those residence halls. We are now in the process of making that a big part of sort of the 4-year experience as we're opening upper class residential colleges that also have faculty living alongside students. So a great way to interact with those folks beyond just sort of that traditional classroom setting. I mentioned on that first slide sort of the balance that you have. Again, finding your place in the community, finding sort of that sense of belonging is a big part of your experience. So many different organizations to plug into. We want you to again, have that life that is extending outside the classroom. If you are someone who is big into athletics and sports, you have a variety of different levels in which you can compete in. And if you enjoy going and watching sporting events, we are part of one of the top divisions in the United States, one of arguably the best conferences in the United States. So you get free tickets to all sporting events. So going out, supporting the athletes can be a big part of your experience if that is something that you want to have during your time on campus as well. I do want to talk a little bit about the admissions process, and then this will kind of lead nicely into sort of the funding aspect as well. So this is sort of our mission statement around evaluating, selecting students. We are very fortunate to have a lot of students that look at Vanderbilt. It's an incredibly competitive pool, but we want to make sure that every application gets the dignity and respect and the time and attention that it deserves. You're putting a lot of time and energy into this application. We're putting a lot of time and energy into that review process as well. We are always looking for reasons to admit. If you happen to look up our acceptance rate before you came to this session, you might be like, doesn't seem like that. But I promise when we're spending months every year looking at those applications, we are always looking for reasons why you should be on our campus, why you should be part of our community. We really are approaching that application through a lens of positive advocacy. If you're looking at institutions in the United States, you're going to hear this sort of holistic process mentioned a lot, perhaps one of those overused terms in all honesty there, but there's a lot of different things that we are looking at in that application. It's always going to start with your academic achievement, understanding you in the context of where you attend high school, the curriculum that you are a part of, knowing that we do not favor one curriculum, we do not favor one country, one system across the world. It is our job to understand the context that you are coming from. And that's why I have a wonderful team that I work with. We divide up the entire world so we can understand the nuances of every school, of every country, of every culture or curriculum, so we can apply that lens when we're looking at sort of that academic record there. You'll see there standardized test scores if submitted. So we are currently still in a test optional space. We're at least test optional through fall 2027. And that's referring to sort of the SAT or ACT in the process there. So if you send me a test score, I will look at it along with your academic record. If you don't send me a test score, that's also fine because it is optional in the process. If you are going to be applying after sort of fall 2027, if you're looking at fall 28 or fall 29, stay tuned, because we will have sort of an update about sort of the future of test optional as we get a little bit closer to those timelines there. So, and if you're looking at our pool, it's a little over half that submit testing. If you look at our enrolled students, it's a little over half that have test scores. So there really is not meant to be an advantage or disadvantage in sort of this test optional space. These first two pieces are kind of the academic parts of the puzzle, but it's really these other pieces that really start to differentiate students. Most of the students in my pool could come to Vanderbilt, could knock it out of the park in the classroom. So we're going to be looking at, what are you doing outside the classroom? These extracurricular activities, leadership, and engagement. And I recognize that extracurriculars are a very American US term. So we also understand, depending on where you're coming from in the world, the emphasis on extracurriculars could look a little bit different. But we want to know about anything that you're doing outside the classroom, whether that's at school, at home, in your community. We're sort of always looking at depth and impact in the things that you are doing. We're asking a number of people to write on your behalf. So we're going to ask for a letter of recommendation from a school counselor, if your school has one. If not, could be another school official, could be a principal, could be someone that sort of oversees sort of your academic experience or the curriculum at your school. And then we're going to ask for two from teachers that, again, kind of know you in a more classroom setting. And that's a great opportunity for us to get to know you better, to understand a little bit about sort of your personality, your background, sort of who you are. And then we're going to ask you to write a little bit. So when you're applying, you're going to be using either the common application or the coalition application. We take either one of those. And on that, you will have sort of a personal statement or a personal essay that you will do that will go to sort of all the institutions that you are applying to. And we're hoping just to learn a little bit more about who you are, a glimpse, a snapshot into who you are. It's a pretty short essay, so you can't tell me your whole life story. But I'm hoping to get sort of an authentic look into who you are, to learn something new about you that I don't see anywhere else in that application. Have fun with that. If you are an intellectual person, let that come through the essay, right? If you're funny, great, make me laugh. If you're not funny, I maybe wouldn't experiment with that for the first time, right? Let your personality, let that authenticity come through that essay. And then we do have a short answer that comes specifically to Vanderbilt as well, asking you to talk about a piece of your background, culture, identity that has shaped you, and how you might bring that to our campus, to our community. We're the only ones that are going to read that, so you can be as specific to Vanderbilt as you want in that essay. So again, a lot of factors that are at play here. In terms of sort of when you apply to Vanderbilt, we have a number of different decision plans there, dates there around sort of that. I know when you're looking at the US, there's a lot of processes and a lot of dates and deadlines there. So we have two early decision plans, the difference really being the date there. Early decision is something that you do at one institution. If you're admitted, you're expected to attend. So it has this sort of binding component to it. I know you'll also come across early action, which a lot of institutions have as well. That has the earlier timeline, but if you're admitted, it doesn't have the binding component to it. So obviously, if you're doing early decision, that is sort of a big commitment that you are making in the process. If you're not ready to make that commitment, we also have regular decision as well. You also see that we have a deadline for merit scholarships, which is helping me start to transition into a little bit about sort of the funding opportunities that are out there as well. So when it comes to Vanderbilt, I want to start with sort of the need-based sort of piece of this as well, although this number that you see here also includes those that receive merit-based scholarships. But for any student that we admit across the world, whether that's a student in the United States or that's a student coming outside the United States, if you are applying for need-based financial aid, which I'll talk a little bit more in depth about what that means here in a second, we're committed to meeting 100% of that need, right? Well, that's a big commitment there for any student, and that will not include any loans. So that's all going to be met with money that you do not have to pay back when you graduate. So you can see there's a really nice range of sort of funding that is going toward students there. You're also going to hear a little bit about sort of merit scholarships as well, which this is not based on your need. This is sort of evaluating whether it be a talent piece or an essay or an academic record or a combination of all of that. And Vanderbilt has a couple of those programs. So the Ingram Scholarship is very much focused on students who have a little bit more of sort of a business or entrepreneurship mind and are looking to sort of give back or use that to give back in their community. There's very much sort of a service and civic engagement and innovation sort of component to that scholarship. And then we also have the Cornelius Vanderbilt Scholarship, which is really measuring a lot of the things that I talked about in admission, sort of top academics, leadership, involvement, impact, a lot of the things that we look at in holistic process, really sort of the top tier of those students. These are both full tuition scholarships. They also come with a stipend of about $6,000 that you can use for some sort of academic enrichment, summer experience, sort of while you are there. The piece here, though, is also if you have need that is above what this scholarship covers, we are also committed to meeting that as well. So we might have some students who are just getting this merit-based scholarship that's funding a good portion of that, but if you had need that extends beyond that, we would also come in with sort of the need-based financial aid, again, to meet 100% of whatever need you might have. So that's specifically to Vanderbilt, but I also want to broaden this out a little bit and talk about, again, a number of the funding opportunities that are out there that you could be looking at sort of more broadly at institutions in the United States. So again, breaking it kind of into these two different categories, and need-based financial aid, again, is based on sort of your family's income, assets that they have. What we're basically going to ask you to do is send us some different forms, which I'll show you on the next slide what those forms are. We're going to have our financial aid office sort of evaluate your circumstances, evaluate that context, and basically determine what can you contribute to your education. And that could be part of it, that could be half of it, that could be most of it, or that could be none of it. And again, we fund students at all different levels because, again, going back to sort of our commitment to creating a campus that represents the larger world that we live in, we want students from all different incomes and assets and socioeconomic statuses sort of represented on our campus. But basically, we determine what can you contribute to your education. We're going to be looking at that total cost of attendance. So when we're evaluating that, we're not just looking at tuition, but we're like, what does it actually cost for you to be on our campus for a given year? So that's going to be including your housing, right? Where are you sleeping? Where are you hanging out? Where are you living? Your food, your books, your transportation to and from campus, knowing that, if you're coming from someplace in the US, that's a little bit cheaper and easier than if you're coming from outside the US. But we're thinking about that total cost to get you to campus, thinking about student health insurance, looking at sort of all these different things. We're looking at that total cost. If there is a difference there, that is where sort of the need-based financial aid will come in. And again, there's a lot of institutions that will meet part of that sort of need. There's a lot of institutions that will also, meet 100% of your need, but they might include a mix of grants or an on-campus job or a loan to do that. And then there's a handful of institutions, not a huge number, but a handful that will meet 100% of that need with no loans. And that's sort of the category that Vanderbilt falls in there. You will also hear when you're looking at institutions, the sort of need blind versus need aware. So there's not a lot of institutions in the US that are fully need blind for international students. It's probably about 10 institutions or so. But what that basically means is that if a school is need blind, they're not looking at sort of your assets or money or anything when they're making an admissions decision. They're just sort of looking at all the things I talked about on that holistic admissions slide. If an institution is need aware, your application is still getting the exact same review as any other student, but one of the last things they may have to look at is sort of the cost piece there, because they might have a certain amount of money set aside to fund international students. And that's sort of the category that Vanderbilt falls in. We are need aware for international students. That being said, you saw on that slide earlier that we fund a large number of international students across the world. So there really is sort of a big commitment there. On the other side of this, again, we have the merit-based scholarships, which I introduced a couple of those that happen at Vanderbilt, but you will see a lot of these type of scholarships out there. There could be an academic-based scholarship. There could be a scholarship that is around sort of community engagement or experiences that you have done sort of outside the classroom. You could end up seeing some talent-based scholarships. So if you are a musician or an artist or a theater person, you might see some schools that have sort of performing arts scholarships that are out there. You'll see a lot of institutions that may have athletic scholarships as well. Vanderbilt's an example of that as well. We are, again, one of the top divisions in the United States. So we have, athletic scholarships out there. We have international students every year that are getting those. I will say, if you are looking to come compete at a Division I or perhaps even Division II level in the United States, the students that are most likely to receive those are going to be those that are competing at sort of that national, international level. So are already competing at a very high level during high school. You might also see in some of your, again, financial aid packages, you might see some on-campus work opportunities. So sometimes if you've applied for financial aid, you might see something called work study, where you're having an on-campus job that is then the money from that is going toward paying your cost to attend that institution. But even if there might be other on-campus opportunities as well. So even if you didn't apply for financial aid, there could be other jobs that you could have as a student on campus that could, again, be used even for sort of spending money on your own, or you could take the money from that and sort of apply it to attending that institution as well. And then depending on the location of the institution, there could be opportunities for off-campus work jobs and experiences as well. And then again, the last piece I want to sort of throw out there is, again, just the different documentation that is out there. This first one is really applying more to U.S. citizens, but I know sometimes I may, depending on where you're tuning in from, we might have some U.S. citizens or dual citizens on this sort of webinar as well. So if you are, you would be sending sort of that application. But if you're just an international citizen, you'd be sending one of these other two forms. Essentially, this is the form that our financial aid office is going to be looking at, again, to sort of determine what can you contribute to your education, what are sort of the income, assets, sort of that piece of the puzzle there. There may be, depending on the institution that you're looking at, there could be some institutions that have their own financial aid form as well. So that's a good thing to look at as you're, again, making that list of schools, seeing the opportunities that are out there. Also make sure as you go through this process, I don't want you to miss out because you didn't fill out the correct form or you're not getting the correct consideration for sort of that financial aid piece. Because again, when you're looking at the US, there's a lot of these very high sticker prices. Sometimes you can even get what I would refer to as sticker shock, right? You're like, there's no way that this could work for our family in the process. But you may find out that there is a huge commitment on our end toward affordability. We never want that to sort of be a barrier for students in the process. So definitely do the research to see the different scholarship opportunities, both need-based and merit, that are out there. There's a lot of great ways to hopefully fund this and make that very affordable for you. So that's really it in terms of sort of the formal part of the presentation. Lots of great ways to stay in contact with Vanderbilt. We have a wonderful presence on Instagram. There's a great way to sort of hop on, take a virtual tour. I know we're not exactly super close to where you are, so this can be a great way from the comfort of your couch to sort of see what life is like on our campus. We also have about 50 students on our website that you can reach out to make connections, again, to get a better sense of what is life like on our campus. So I will stop there, and I will stop, I think, sharing as well.
Thank you.
I will set up questions.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Not so many questions, by the way, in the chat. So please, everyone who is live with us now, please submit them. We will still answer those whom we got in advance. So one of the first questions was, what does meeting 100% of demonstrated need actually look like if Vanderbilt calculates that a family can pay $30,000, but the family feels they can only pay $10,000? How does Vanderbilt handle appeals from international families?
Sure. So I'll start on the first part of that question, because I feel like it's kind of like a two-part question. But what does it really mean to sort of meet 100% of need? I mean, again, when we're talking about that need, we are really talking about the total cost of attendance. So it's not just looking at the tuition and planning to meet that. We are thinking about, again, your housing, your books, your transportation, personal expenses, truly that total cost of attendance. So just know that when we're building out those financial aid packages, we are thinking about all of that when meeting 100%. Again, we're going to look at these different forms that you will send us to calculate what sort of we feel like you and your family can contribute to your education. There may be times where, depending on what you send us and what context we have, we might determine this number that, you're actually like, well, that feels perhaps a little bit higher than what we can actually contribute to that. And again, we try to sort of apply this formula to all students in the process, but sometimes it is a little bit higher than maybe what you and your family can, actually feel like you can afford and contribute to that. And that's sometimes where the loan piece could come into play there for that part. Again, knowing that we are meeting 100% above that. But there could also be an opportunity, particularly if context has changed as you've gone through the process as well, where you can reach out to our financial aid office with some additional information and additional context, and they have been able to readjust packages there. But it doesn't happen all the time or even often because, again, we're making that commitment of meeting 100%. So because of that on the front end, oftentimes we're already making that big commitment to you. But again, we know as you go through the process, things can change. Additional pieces of information may not have originally been submitted that could then be added. So they're welcome to sort of work with families in this process.
Okay, thank you so much for this detailed answer. I just wanted to clarify here. Students can use CSS profile to apply for the financial aid, right? Is that the same?
They can,
same
yes, they can use, right. Yes, they can use the CSS profile to apply for financial aid. But I also know that there is a cost that comes with that. So we are not able to sort of offer waivers for that. So if that cost is a barrier for students, we actually can allow them to use kind of our version of the ISFA that used to be out there. And that does not have a cost with it, and it captures similar information. So a student can also submit that, again, if the cost is a barrier for the CSS profile.
That's good to know. Thank you so much. Okay, the next question. Since Vanderbilt promises to pay for 100% of an accepted student's financial need, how hard is it for an international student to get a full ride?
I'll be honest that it is, international students applying for financial aid is probably our most competitive process, one of the most competitive processes that we have. That being said, it is a competitive process as a whole to get into Vanderbilt. I mean, looking at sort of the numbers last year, we are below 5% acceptance rate in regular decision. It was close to about a 3% acceptance rate. So it's a very highly selective institution to sort of get in. And, there we continue to see interest abroad continue to grow. So that process has also just gotten more and more competitive there. That being said, I continue to get, have more and more money that we're able to use toward international students. We have, a directive from our chancellor, which is our president, to continue to sort of grow that international presence on our campus. So it's nice to have an institution that wants to have more international students on campus. So I feel like there's continues to be a lot of funding available. We continue to have a lot of students who are coming in on funding. So it definitely is a very competitive process. And I know sometimes you hear that and you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't apply for financial aid. If you need financial aid to make this work for you and your family, you want to apply for it on the front end. You do not want to apply as sort of a full pay international student, then potentially get admitted and then try to come and ask for financial aid, because there is not an opportunity to do that. And I don't want you to sort of have that false hope there for a moment. So again, I know it can maybe seem like a little bit more of a competitive process if you're applying for aid, but if you need that to really make it work for you and your family, you want to go through that process with an institution.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. And just a note here, from the statistics you have of the international students that have been accepted already with a full ride, were those students considered also proportionally to the test optional policy? I mean, those students had their SAT and IELTS and TOEFL maximum scores or not? Because usually students would ask us, is the university really paying attention to this? Does that mean that this can be a criteria when they are revising our application?
Yeah, so it definitely is, because we are, before we even get to the conversation about sort of the funding of an international student, we are still giving your application the same review as any other student. And I don't want you to feel like if you're applying for funding that we don't still look at all the parts of your application. In fact, I don't really look at the funding piece until the very end. So I'm still looking at your academic record. I'm looking at a test score, if you send it or not. I'm looking at an English proficiency score, should you need to send that. So all those things are still looked at. So typically the students that we are funding are going to be having those, if they choose to send a test score, are going to be having those very strong SATs or ACTs. In terms of English proficiency, They don't necessarily have to be on the higher end of those scales, as long as they're meeting sort of, we have published minimum recommended scores. So I always say, like, as long as they have reached this proficiency, we feel like they are going to be fine in sort of our academic experience. So it's not one of those things, if you, for the TOEFL, for example, or I'll use Duolingo, if you had like a 130 versus a 150, like both of those kind of meet our kind of minimum recommended there. But definitely something that we're going to be looking at. That being said, I also fund a lot of students. I don't want you to think, okay, you're in this test optional space, but are you funding more students with a test score or not? No, I really feel like, again, we're seeing about a little over half of our students in the entire pool sending a test score. And I think, honestly, if we were to break it down by sort of international citizen, there's probably more of a 50-50 split there, because we know there's not as many offerings to take the SAT abroad as there are in the United States. But I'm funding just as many students who are not submitting a test score as well. So I don't want you to think the only way you can secure funding from us is if you submit a test score. We really are operating in this test optional world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next one, what is one component international applicants usually miss while choosing undergraduate program?
Good question. I think sometimes, and again, sometimes people will get caught up in the acceptance rate, right? They're looking at sort of the acceptance rate of the institution, but we actually will also publish the number of applications for each of our undergraduate schools and how many students were admitted. So sometimes you'll go in and be like, oh, it looks like it's a little bit easier to get into this undergraduate school versus this, even though I'm actually a better fit or thinking about this program, but I want to figure out how can I sort of get into that institution. And I would encourage you not to do that. I encourage you, when you sit down and you're thinking about the schools that you're applying to and you're thinking about the programs that you're looking at, making sure it really is the right fit for you. Because on our end of things, and again, using the Vanderbilt lens here, we evaluate based on the school that you apply for, knowing that a student applying to engineering will have probably might have a different experience in terms of the math and science classes they've taken, perhaps the things they're involved in outside the classroom. It's like very different than a student who's applying for education, who has probably worked with kids in some capacity during their high school experience, right? That looks very different than your student who is going to audition for music, right? They have to have that sort of talent piece there. So you might look at our School of Music, for example, and you're like, wow, it's a pretty small group applying. Looks like the acceptance rate's higher. But if you sing like me, you're not getting in, right? So you've got to have, the talent component piece there as well. So again, think about when you're applying to schools, when you're applying to programs, based on what you know at the time of application, knowing that when you get to the US, a lot of institutions, you can change your mind. And that's okay. We want you to have that academic freedom, but what is going to be the best fit for you at the time of application, and make sure that is really driving where you apply.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that's one of the answer that we also would give to our students, the best fit. And I think they're sick about this term, the best fit from us. But yes,
I was going to say, by the time you're done with this process, fit and holistic are probably two words you're going to never want to hear again when you're done.
Right.
But
I agree. Okay, the next question. I want help with applying to an American community college. What are the requirements for students from Tajikistan? Do I need SAT, TOEFL? I'm not sure if you are the best fit to answer to the question, because your school is a regular one, but from your experience, I can also add from mine in case if needed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't have a lot of specifics, and again, it may even differ among community colleges in terms of what they're going to require and ask. I mean, I feel like that's kind of one thing I think, as you're looking just broadly at the US, you're going to see, different schools are going to have different requirements, even within sort of like, the realm of schools similar to Vanderbilt, there might be different requirements. I mean, some folks have returned to requiring testing for every student. Others are still remaining test optional around SAT. Some might have ways where you don't have to submit an English proficiency because you meet their English requirement in some other way. And in fact, we even have that where if English is your primary language of instruction, or if you choose to submit an SAT or ACT, there's a certain subscore for each of those that could actually take the place of an English exam. So, but not every institution has that same policy. So I imagine even in community colleges that's probably different even among the different community colleges that are out there, but you might have a better lens on that than I have.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree, and I subscribe to everything that you have mentioned earlier. I think for this question, you definitely should sign up with to a consultation with us. I am here promoting our services. But yeah, sometimes for community colleges, you wouldn't even need an SAT or a TOEFL because they can, as Shane said, they can train you on campus in case if you are already a good fit for them, considering the application that you already would give them. But yes, in order to give you a more specific advice on this, it's going to be very good if you can just let us know if you are available for a consultation. We can just give you more details on that. Okay, the next question. Are there any resources, websites to find financial aid from U.S. universities, colleges for international students? You can maybe share yours, I can share mine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I know there's a lot of like search engines that you can use out there that can kind of be help guide you in terms of that, because I know there's, in addition to, so there's a lot of what I've been talking about today from like the financial aid scholarship has been more institutional level. So again, as you're looking at in creating your list of institutions, figuring out what are they able to offer you in terms of merit scholarships, do they offer need-based financial aid, are they meeting 100%? But that's kind of all at the institutional level. But there's a lot of great websites, and you probably have better insight in that on kind of what's available to your students. But in terms of sometimes there's websites where you can search for sort of governmental scholarships, depending on the country that you're coming from. There could be funding opportunities in your home country that is helping fund an opportunity to go to higher education, to do university. But there's also sometimes these like third party or community level or other scholarship programs that are out there where you might be able to secure that funding and then apply that to your university experience. So there's a lot of great engine. Again, I feel like this is where your services and guidance is probably going to be super helpful to these students.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah, we do have a bunch of resources for that and websites. And one of that can be also educationusa.gov. There are also a lot of scholarships that the students can apply to. And of course, the exchange programs that Shane also have mentioned are also a way. The thing with exchange programs is they are not lasting for so long, like a regular school in the US. So here again, you would need a consultation in order to get our advice on everything and the resources, the links to the website specifically. Thank you. The next question, what are the most effective strategies for international students to maximize their chances of receiving need-based or merit-based financial aid from U.S. universities?
So again, we've talked a lot about the things that we evaluate here. And again, I want you to feel like before the money conversation even happens for international students, it's still getting the same review, right? And the ones that we are really talking about for our merit scholarships or for funding in need-based are because they have really risen to the top of the pool because of all these things we evaluate in the admissions process. So my best advice to you is to really advocate for yourself in this application, right? The US application requires you to talk about yourself a lot, which I know can sometimes be very uncomfortable. You're like, I'm not used to talking about myself. I don't like talking about myself. But the extracurricular chart is an opportunity for you to really brag on yourself. And it should really feel like that. You're like, wow, I'm talking about my accomplishments, my achievements, my impacts, the things I am doing. It feels like I'm talking about myself a lot. It's because we're asking you to do that. So please don't feel like on our end, we're like, oh my gosh, the student thinks they're like, running the world. We want to know all these things that you are doing. So don't hold it back there on these essays. Again, they're short. So sometimes you're like, I can put these off. It's going to be fine. But it's just a different type of writing than you have often done in high school because you are sharing a piece of your personality, your background. And I'll be honest with you, I'd probably rather write a research paper because I know how to do that. There's a formula to that as opposed to picking something to share about myself because that's just a little bit different. So giving yourself some time and thinking about how you're crafting the story in that application, knowing, all right, I've got a personal essay to talk about something. I've got this additional information section where I could, if there's any context that I want to include that doesn't fit anywhere else, I have a spot to do that. I have this short answer that's going just to the school. What can I talk about differently? So you're all multifaceted, multidimensional people. So figure out, how do I tell that story? How do I put my best foot forward in that application? those are the best applications that I read. When I get to the end of it and I'm like, I know exactly who that student is. I know what they're passionate about. I know what they're interested in. And if that's a really good fit for what I have and what I'm seeing in my pool, those are the students that I want to talk about in terms of merit scholarships, in terms of need-based financial aid, in terms of admitting to our institution.
And here, a question from me: how decisive is the personal statement? Because sometimes the universities would tend to say that, I basically made a decision based on the personal statement the student has submitted. So is it so important in so many cases?
It definitely is important because, again, think about there's sometimes not that many things that are differentiating, right? A lot of the academic piece is sort of bringing you into the conversation. So it is really these, the extracurriculars, the essays, and the recommendations that really start to make that differentiation. So I feel like, that the personal statement can certainly be very important. I mean, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, we're getting to hear how you communicate, right? And you're going to be writing a lot, you're going to be talking a lot on our campus. And so this is a chance for us to get a glimpse on sort of how you're communicating effectively through a piece of writing. But again, this is also one of the few parts in the application where I really get to hear from you directly, right? There aren't that many spaces where I'm hearing a ton about you, but this essay is all about you. So I do feel like they can, and again, it's hard to say like what weighs more than another, because there can be, the nice thing about a holistic process is a student could stand out for a variety of different reasons, right? It could be, wow, they've done this incredible initiative in their community. That's what's making this student stand out, right? It could be, hey, this essay is like one we're passing around the office because we're like, this student, what they've shared, their perspective, their background is an incredible story here, right? It could be, hey, I read this recommendation and this person says that this student is unlike any other that's come through our high school, right? Or they're one of those people that you want in your community because of the community building that they do, or how they bring people together, or how they foster incredible conversation. So that's the nice thing about a holistic process, is you can stand out in a lot of ways, but the personal essay is something that I think is incredibly important. And I know we're in a world right now where we get a lot of questions. Sorry, I'm deviating a little bit here about the use of AI or ChatGPT or some of that in writing these essays. And this goes back to my first part about the authenticity. Like, again, this should be your work. If you use, again, we're not shying away from the technology that's out there, right? These resources can be a great thing to help you brainstorm, to help you organize your thoughts. But I will tell you that AI is not going to replace your voice, right? And I've read a lot of essays that have been put through a ChatGPT, and I get to the end of the essay and I'm like, this is well written, it's well constructed, but I didn't learn anything about the student. It misses the voice, it misses the personalization. So I really feel like in order to really communicate who you are, the authenticity, this being your work, will go a long way in those personal essays.
Thank you so much. The next question that we got in the chat: does the music program in Vanderbilt include courses in songwriting, music production, or music technology, or is it only based on one specific branch?
No, good question. So the primary focus is going to be on performance. That's what the school is most known for, but also the composition piece as well. Those are really, and that exists both in the classical space, performance, composition, but also jazz has a performance and a composition piece as well. So it's going to be more of the performance and the songwriting piece here. But because of the location, while not necessarily as much in the classroom setting, we sometimes have students who are getting into the production side of things, or the tech side of things, or even the music business side of things through some of the internships that they are doing. So, and again, depending on the program you're looking for, again, this is going to be more performance, sort of composition based. But I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to go on that Blair School of Music website, as it does outline pretty directly sort of all the different opportunities that you would have.
Thank you very much. The last question in the chat: which colleges are going to be represented in New York Vanderbilt campus?
Good question. So I believe that is going to be starting mostly with the College of Arts and Science will be sort of the primary in terms of sort of the classes that are being taught there. And then as part of our education school, not so much the teaching and learning half, but the HOD half, which is kind of this organizational leadership major that I was sort of talking about. That's very popular over there. I think students that are in kind of those different areas will have the opportunities to do the internships and sort of the classroom experience in New York. This is just launching for the first time this fall, so it is possible as that campus continues to get more established, there may be more opportunities for sort of students across the board there. But I think those are kind of the two primary schools and areas that are going to be starting on that campus. But I encourage you again, and that's something that you're doing once you're here at Vanderbilt. So it's sort of a study away option that you would have. So again, it's likely that things will continue to change there as kind of these new campuses that we have are kind of evolving and changing all the time.
Thank you so much. One more question in the chat. Do you recommend study international relation? I think that's a very general question, but maybe you can just say a bit about the major if you have this program, if you have that available at your institution.
So I know there are some schools that will have like an international like relations major or very specific in that. And Vanderbilt doesn't necessarily have an international relations major. We have a lot of classes or areas within majors that have an international focus, whether that might be within public policy or political science that might have some international courses focus there. Could happen in economics as well. But then we also have a lot of language programs. We also have a lot of cultural studies program that could kind of get you a little bit more of that international perspective and lens. And then we have so many study away and broad programs as well. We have about 120 programs scattered in about 45 different countries across the world. We've had students go to all 7 continents. So there's a lot of opportunities to also have those experiences away from Vanderbilt. But in terms of do I recommend it, I really think it comes down to sort of your interests. And again, I encourage you to use your interests and passions to guide, the schools that you're looking at, the majors that you choose to do, the areas that you choose to sort of study when you're there.
Thank you. One more question. Thanks for the answer. If I have another question about the music major, can I reach out to the department by email?
You can, absolutely. So and this is more broadly just beyond music, any of our majors or schools, if you go on and look at sort of their department page, and there's like usually a 1-pager about every major, there's always a department contact at the end. So you can always reach out if you have more specific questions. But on the Blair School, they also have just like their own separate contact as well. So you can absolutely reach out with additional questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Shane, for the presentation, for answering to all the questions. I really enjoyed. I really hope that everyone who was with us today during this live, they also enjoyed it. And in case if you'll have some other questions, you have your advisors available for one-on-one consultations. So we would be happy to help. Otherwise, you can go on our website and you can register for all the other webinars that we have planned for the end of this month. One more question, I think, here from Irakli. Does Vanderbilt use country or regional quotas for international admissions or financial aid, or are all non-US citizens evaluated in a single pool?
Yeah, so we do not operate in a world of quotas by country, by citizenship, by region, because I want to sort of see for every decision plan that we have, what does my pool look like? And really evaluating all of those students, who is rising to the top of those pools. So that's why we never want to limit ourselves by, we can only take this many students from this high school or from this country or from this region. And again, this differs year to year on where I'm seeing applicants from, who's rising to the top of the pool. So I never want to kind of limit myself by having these quotas.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we are ready to wrap up with our today's session. Thank you so much once again, Shane. I said it's going to be 45 minutes, but it's a bit longer. I really hope that the students enjoyed it as much as I did. I really hope that we'll be back with more sessions with you here on our YouTube channel. And if you guys enjoyed our today's webinar, let us know. Let us know maybe what topics you would like us to discuss more, or if you want to go more deep into the financial aid, what specifically you would like us to talk about. I really hope that even though the information was very general, it was also very specific on the terms that Shane has been using, and you already had an idea about what is need aware, what is need blind aid. So I think everything was super informative. Thank you once more, Shane, for your professionalism and for moderating our today's session. We really, really appreciate that. And to everyone else who is now today with us, and I wish you a great end of this day. And yeah, stay tuned with the rest of the webinars that we have planned for you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.